Welcome to Culture is an Inside Job, the podcast on building an authentic, engaging, and inspiring culture. Hi, I'm Wendy Roop, and along with my friends and co-hosts Karen Preston and Scott McGowan, we believe that building a healthy work culture starts with leaders like you. If you're ready to get real and dig deep into your own self-awareness, determine how you want to show up in the world, and then take aligned action to transform your leadership and those around you, then this podcast is for you. Now, let's go inside. Welcome, everyone.
How are you?
Great. How are you?
You know, it's a great day. It's great to be heard and then great to be seen. So,
Yes, good to see you and hear you, Scott. Good to see you. Karen, how are you?
I am great. I am so happy to be here.
Excellent. We've got Taylor in the background. Thank you, Taylor, as always. Welcome back to Culture is an Inside Job podcast. We are unbelievably talking, let's see, what are we? Episode 5, right? Episode 5. So we've been talking about the last couple of episodes. We introduced energy leadership, which comes from a work from Bruce Snyder, which is he's the founder of IPEC, the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. And so today we thought that we would continue on that path. And I think we'll start. Karen, how about we start with just a recap of level 1 and 2 that we were talking about, last episode. Sound good?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So to kind of get back, let's kind of go back, if you're okay, Wendy, to talk about catabolic and anabolic, right?
Sure.
And that catabolic energy, those lower levels of energy, are that destructive or damaging kind of energy that really down to the cellular level has an impact. And that the higher levels, the anabolic energy, are more constructive and creative. This is like more, we stay away from positive and negative because they're a little judgy. So if we go back down to these 1 and 2 levels, we see this as the catabolic energy. And we all know these levels. We've been here, we feel them, we understand. Well, we may not understand that we're there, but the awareness that we're trying to help our listeners build here is about how we're showing up. So level 1 is I lose. It's that feeling really helpless and hopeless. I always talk about it as like, it's the can't get out of bed mentality. And you may be out of bed, but it's just all you're thinking about is the weight of the world on your shoulders. And it's really hard to move from this space, right? Mentally move, physically move, emotionally move. We get very stuck here. Level 2 is you lose. So there's more movement, but it's a lot of conflict. We're full of anger, resentment, frustration, maybe blaming everyone else for the circumstance that we're in, defiance, right? We find all of these very damaging emotions in this level 2 space with conflict. And today, I think you maybe come back to you here, Wendy, if there's anything else that we should add to the level 1 and 2 and catabolic and anabolic before we move into more of the anabolic energies that we'll touch on today. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Karen. The one thing that's just coming up for me is just reminding our audience that in all of these levels, there's no good or bad or right or wrong, right? And so as we're talking about the catabolic level, it's not that it's bad or wrong, it's that how long are we staying there? And when you, Karen, were talking about, how it can literally break down our body and our mind and our spirit and other people, right? That's if we stay in it for, longer than just a short period of time. In the short, though, right, there can be advantages to it. We just don't want to stay there. So I just want to remind everybody about that, so we don't look at it as positive or negative or good or bad or right or wrong.
Mm-hmm. So to come back to hear, Scott, if there's anything that you wanted to kind of add or play on with this level 1 and 2 before we jump into these little bit higher levels.
well, I think one of the things that I'm thinking about too is it's almost like the process of like grief. So in other words, like I could be in a spot where I'm in level 1 and level 2, because I'm just hurting, and that's okay, right? The
Yeah.
issue is, quite frankly, is we have to understand the impact that we have on ourselves, as you said, internally, what it's doing to our body. Our body's being torn down, right? It's not growing.
Mhm.
And then therefore, if we take that to other people, it's very likely we're tearing them down,
That's right.
right? But if there's an episode or an issue going on in my life that, like, I don't always have to be in a good mood. I can be in that space. I think the secret is for this, and what I love about this is, do you know where you are? Like,
Mhm.
I am here.
Mm-hmm.
And then do you have, and I think what I love about the two of you is, you have the tools to dig out of the hole, that whether you put yourself in that hole or circumstances put you in that hole, other people put you in that hole. Do you have the tools and the resources to climb out of that hole?
I love that. Thank you for sharing. Grief definitely is a very unique process, and there are a lot of these levels that are tied to some of the process of grieving. That is way beyond my
Pay grade.
my pay grade. And for those that this would be, I would say, this is good enough to start as a place for anyone who's going through grief to build awareness, like you said, understand where you are, have that level of really high level of awareness and acceptance, and be able to acknowledge yourself in that space. That is really truly the gift.
I was talking to somebody about their parent took care of everything and all their funeral arrangements before they passed. I mean, everything, every detail.
Hmm.
And a psychologist said that's noble, but it eradicates the grieving process.
It makes sense. That's part of the process. You say,
It's
like,
part
trust
of
it. Yeah.
like, I don't want to stand in line and like give these people hugs, and I don't want to do, and that's
But you
part
have
of,
to do it.
yeah,
Yes.
you have to
It's the
go through
healing.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And then their advice back to that, like, like, I understand, like, you want to help people do that, but you're robbing people of that process. And if you don't go through the process, then,
Mm-hmm.
as you said, Karen, too, then you live in this world of resentment and just all kinds of crazy stuff. So I
Yeah.
thought that was really interesting.
That is interesting. And it just that's the exciting thing about our podcast, because I think there's a space for that at some point, right? Diving a little bit more into grief, because it's just not when somebody passes either, right? We're going through all kinds of grief, just in things that we've lost over the last couple of years. So I think energy, these 7 levels of leadership and energy leadership is something that, we can even reference back to when we're talking about that, as well as some other things. So
Yeah.
awesome.
So before we go into level 3, I just wanted to acknowledge what you were just talking about here, Scott. It made me think of a butterfly in its cocoon, right? And that's a process, and it's a painful process for that little caterpillar, right? We can't imagine, but think about the change, the metamorphosis, that if we were to poke the outside of their cocoon, that it may prohibit their necessary experience to transform. Like, thinking about it from that perspective, you're right. If we interject that process that is so critical in anyone's process of healing or of reconciliation or of anything, forgiveness, think about it, anything that we may interject poke ourselves into, that we may be prohibiting that the ideal part of the process, right?
And I love that you brought that up, Karen, because that completely makes sense in all of these levels that we're talking about, right? Even these lower levels. Like, we have to go through these things. And like we've talked about, like, the key and the secret is the self-awareness, but we have to go through it. We can't just, if we try to quote unquote skip, the way that we feel in the way, and think in some of these levels, we're not truly dealing with what's going on within us. We're just ignoring it. And guess what? It's going to keep coming up over and over again, and we're not going to grow. So yeah, I love how you describe that.
Yeah. So level 3, interestingly here, this is a a crossroad, really, where you're coming out of 1 and 2. The mindset here is I win. And so in that, whatever it takes for me to get my win, I really don't care about anyone else. If they lose, it's fine, as long as I can get my win. And you can see there's still a little bit of catabolic energy here, right? However, we've moved from a loss to a win. So that's this a little bit of anabolic energy. We find ourselves here very often because many of us are not willing to stay in 1 and 2 long enough, like we said, to consider, why am I here? Why do I feel helpless? Why do I feel angry? We just think it's bad, and so we don't want to be there. So we get ourselves in the coping and rationalizing mentality of, I'm going to do whatever it takes for me to get my win, and that's it, and I'm good. And then we realize that we stay good enough, right? And this is where we don't ever reach those higher levels. We just stay right and good enough. We're coping and rationalizing, keeping ourselves out of 1 and 2 because they suck. They're too difficult. It's not worth it. Whatever it is, right? We're
tired of that stuff.
Yeah, you hear me rationalizing, right? I got to do whatever it takes to get my win. And there's a lot of us feeling this right now because we're tired of this situation that we're in, the worldly situation with so many different issues, right? And like the VUCA world that we've talked, some people refer to as volatile, uncertain, chaotic, and ambiguous, right? In a VUCA world.
VUCA. What's a VUCA?
Yeah, the acronym is volatile.
Yep.
Uncertain, chaotic, and ambiguous.
Ooh,
And
I've never heard that before.
Oh yeah, VUCA. Yeah. Well, we're in the middle of this, right? So yeah, this is our level 3.
Sounds like a lava lamp, right? Like a VUCA lamp.
VUCA lamp. We are in the middle of a VUCA lamp, and the heat is on.
There you go.
Sing it, girl.
I don't think we're allowed to do that on these things. So
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, and when you're talking to Karen from the anabolic perspective, the reason we're stepping into the anabolic is because that core emotion is really, and you mentioned this, forgiveness. Whether it's forgiveness of ourselves or forgiveness of somebody else, and cooperation. And so that's where it steps in, as well as and you said this, we don't let others get in the way of what we want to accomplish. We're really starting to release that negativity. The challenge, though, right, or the disadvantage, however you want to look at that, is we can be manipulative when we're in this.
Very manipulative. Yes.
Great, right? Because it is self-concerning too. So whatever we need to do to feel like we're moving forward. I feel like this is a very self-protective level, right? And probably lacking trust. And we promise things, but they're not necessarily from the heart. We're in this level as well. So yeah.
It's interesting too, because I think, and obviously, I'm not a doctor. I'm not, I don't have the expertise that the two of you have, but I do think that our brain's natural tendency is to look at most, if not all, circumstances as a threat.
Fight or flight.
Yeah. I mean, like all of our job, our body's number one job is to protect us.
Yeah.
Number one, whether it be sight or sound. And that skepticism could be like really detrimental to us. Yeah. And I love what you said about moving like to this level, and it's the ability to cooperate, right? Which is probably dropping blame, shame, victimhood, at least trying to drop some of those things.
Yes.
But your motive isn't virtuous.
Right. Yeah.
You think it sounds virtuous, and you might be very good and it might sound virtuous, but in your heart, it's not virtuous at all. It's just,
you're only focused on what you can do to get yourself out of that 1 and 2. And you haven't seen the opportunities that are above you in that level of energy that we will talk about at some point in the future. But again, or that we've touched on, even the idea of getting to an opportunity in a level 5 win-win, you're not there. You're not there.
Mhm.
It's not about anybody else. The cooperative level is really only about whatever it's going to take for you, manipulating the way for you, right? If you've got to push other people down, it's okay. You rationalize that, you've justified it. There's still a lot of seated level 1 and level 2 that come from why we stay in level 3, right?
Yeah, and if we talk about a couple examples, one, and Scott, I think we talked about this. I think you might have brought this up in one of our last episodes. Was how can we use this advantageously in a meeting, right? So versus, and you were describing this, right? Going into the meeting and even though you already have your mind made up on what needs to happen from probably a business perspective, sometimes you can go in and, maybe it's the pleaser or whatever in you that you're like, oh, I need to make sure I hear everybody's voices. But at the end of the meeting, you're like, well, this is what we're going to do. Thanks for your ideas. And the damage that can cause. But if we can come in from that level 3 perspective and say, I hope you come along. I want you to understand. I hope you understand type of thing. But at the end of the day, this is what's got to happen. That's a level 3 conversation, level 3 meeting. So you're being authentic to really what's going on instead of, right, trying to please or pretend like anybody has a voice in it when they really don't have a voice in it. What comes up for you there, Scott? Anything else in different than what you talked about last time when we bring that up?
It's probably, very similar to the only thing that came to my mind was like a firefighter, right? So a professional, building's on fire. Like we don't have a lot of time. Like we're not going to talk about how we feel, right? We have this situation going on. You know your role. I know mine. We are moving. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Oh boy.
And then I was thinking about my daughter, like growing up, she would have this pouty lip, right? So if she lost it in a grocery store aisle, right? And then the pouty lip, so she would get her way. So she was in 1 and 2, but that pouty lip carried her to 3, which means she got what she wanted. Oh yeah. And that is, and I know my son did it too, but the pouty lip was just like, you got to be kidding me. And it took me probably 5 or 6 years to figure out what the pouty lip.
I know what's going on here.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It worked. That's all she cared about.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing about, I'm sorry, Karen, go ahead.
Nope, go ahead. Nope. It's all good.
I was just going to say the other example. We were talking about rationalizing because that's what this is called, is the rationalizer. So, we really can rationalize our behavior and other people's behavior when we're in this mode.
Big time.
So, rationalizing someone else's behavior might be, well, I'm sure they didn't really mean it anyway, right? Or I'm sure they meant to get that in on time and they just forgot. We just rationalize it because, again, we just want to move forward and don't want to be stuck in where we were with that at level 1 and level 2. Any other examples you can think of with the rationalization from either of you?
I loved your firefighter because this is corporate America right now. There are 3 different time dimensions in organizations, right? It's the fires that we're putting out right now. It's the year-end goals that we're trying to achieve. And it's that future 5-year forecast. We don't look at that well enough as organizations. We are literally stuck in firefighter mode. So yes, not only the analogy, Scott, of a firefighter, but look at every leader out there that most anyone can really relate to this right now. Is all I got to do, I just have to keep my head down and focus on what's right here, right now. And that's the fire in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is good, right? Like Wendy, you were saying, this is an advantage because we got to put the fire out. But what's limiting in this is the fact that we can't think strategically enough about, why is there a fire in the first place? Why am I keeping myself out of 1 and 2? Right? And if we could shift that mentality just enough And we'll talk about what happens, what does it take in order to create that shift. But if we could make that shift to be able to start thinking more strategically, how do we mitigate the fire? How do we prevent the fire? That's that's the objective of understanding and having this awareness of where we are right now, seeing, wow, I'm in the middle of just facing this fire and that's all I can do. Well, is it really truly all you can do? That's all you think you can do because you're coping. You're stuck in the coping and rationalizing of just seeing it from your lens. Now, if we put a different lens on this, and we'll talk about what that looks like in an upcoming episode with level 4 and so forth. But amazing that you mentioned the firefighter, because I think there are so many people. And let's bring this back to culture, right? Scott, take it away.
Well, as I was thinking about that too, I think sometimes there's people that are addicted to 1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
peace and serenity is so far off that when they get it for a glimpse of time, they got to screw up because chaos is what they're drunk on.
Mm-hmm.
And peace is so foreign to them.
Yeah.
That it's just, unfortunately, and inside of an organization, and you brought this up, is people, people most often do what they see, not what they hear, what they see. And then, believe it or not, too, inside of chaos and inside of really tough situations, people want to be led. They want to be led. So there are circumstances where we don't have a lot of time for cooperation and collaboration.
Yeah.
We just need to line up our best assets and move forward and be willing to make mistakes fast, make them forward. And then lastly, make them in a really safe place. And I think what COVID has really done for organizations, which I kind of appreciate, is the fact that there's no playbook on the past. So no one can say, well, other companies did this. Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure there are a bunch of culture books when the Spanish flu hit America, right?
Right.
There wasn't. So there wasn't a reference point.
Yeah.
So the reference point that if you were a good leader, you were vulnerable. It's, hey, I'm doing my best here, and I need the best out of you.
Yeah,
and
like
it's not
we
like
level set the playing field.
Exactly. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it goes back to what we were saying from the beginning. That's why this work is so important. It is truly about self-awareness, and it's about the understanding that no matter where we are in these levels, that we have a choice. And so those people, Scott, that you were talking about, that sometimes they, it's literally, I refer to it as their operating system. They've been operating in that way for so long that it's just their natural being. And when they fall outside of that, they feel like something's off, right? And so that's the beauty of why I know Karen and I especially, why we do what we do. We help people to really be able to step back and have an opportunity to see that. Where are you really? Get really real about how you're showing up. And then guess what? You don't have to stay there if you don't want to. And it's that question, how is it serving you? If it's not serving you, and if it's not serving other people, what is the choice that you want to make in shifting your mindset?
Yeah, taking that one step further to how is it serving the organization as well right now, right? So
I think for organizations too, is if you were an organization that told people what to do, how to do it, when to do it before COVID, and you think that mindset's going to survive, you're dead in the water.
Yeah.
And here's why. We're looking for 10 million jobs right now in this country. And 6 million require college education. Well, there's only 6 million people that are willing to work today. And only 2 million of them have a college education. So I was on a panel with the director of Cardinal Health. And what was really interesting about that was the fact that where these people are going to get their people is inside of your organization.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to stop telling, start asking, start giving people purpose, start with vulnerability, humility, all of these different things. And instead of thinking you need to recruit outside, like you better start recruiting inside,
Mm.
because the world's coming inside your organization.
Mhm.
And it probably starts with the energy that your organization has on the inside. You can trick a new hire, right? You can say how great it is. You can give them a great brochure. You can give them great benefits. But when reality hits, their first day of work, and they go and no one's there to greet them at the front door.
Mhm.
Where's my laptop? It doesn't work. Boy, this looks used. I mean, all of it's the tiny
Little
things.
things.
And they're like, hey, like I was just sold a bill of goods here. And employees today have the ability, they can tap out any second and go get a job like today, not
Yeah.
tomorrow, but like right now.
Yeah.
So
I love your attitude, Scott. It's if we don't start shifting our mindset in that way in corporate America and in general, yeah, I mean, we're not going to be moving in the right direction, right?
And I think, and I know we've got to, kind of wrap up, but I think for most leaders, if they would seriously just consider, how would you want your son or daughter treated? If you just left it at that, just your son or daughter. So if you look at your employees as like your son and daughter, and you just care about how they're treated, how they're nurtured, how they're like brought up. Taylor's probably like, yeah, really, that's not my day. I'm just kidding.
I totally disagree.
Yeah.
I've heard Taylor before. He said, "Oh
He
no,
knows.
Dad, I think you did a fine job."
Oh
You
yeah,
know?
absolutely.
So what do you think, Karen? Do you think we should introduce, remind about level 4, and then next time we can, dive into it a little bit deeper? Or
I love that idea. I love that idea for 2 reasons. One is that this level 3 we've talked about, we've felt the heaviness of it, right? And now, like, let's look at the lighter side of it. Okay. In that space of awareness, if we could see ourselves coping and rationalizing, justifying our actions just to take care of ourselves, and saw that this could actually work better if I looked outside of myself enough and step on a level 4 bridge that is of service and compassion. And we will talk more about this in the upcoming episode. This is my teaser. That this really is that way to get to the win-win, to get to the higher levels of leadership, the higher level of energy. It takes awareness, it takes acceptance, it takes conscious choice to step on that level 4 bridge. But the level 4 bridge is the space of compassion and curiosity. That's where the more compassionate we can be with ourselves, we can be with our loved ones, we can be with our employees, we can be with the leaders. The more compassionate we can be with the situation that we're in, the more we can ask the questions. How did I get here? Why am I here? How is this serving me? Where do I want to see myself? What do I need to do for you? What does this organization need from me? All the inquiry that we can come from in that level 4 space, it's amazing what can happen and can be created from compassion and curiosity. So I just leave it with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to add one more thing to that. The other thing I love about stepping into this level 4 is that we really start to take very little personally. And that's a big deal, because again, we're human beings. And so often, we're making it all about, well, it must have been something that I did, or, what have you. So once we're in this, like, we take very little personally because we're thinking about the other person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just that service mindset.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk real quick about the challenge of it, and then maybe we'll leave it there.
The challenge of level 4?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Some of the challenges here, and you have some more information there as well, so piggyback off of this, but we can be of too much service. Too much of service. We can be giving. We can take care of others before we take care of ourselves. this is the pleaser in us that's willing to make sure everyone else is taken care of, and we have forgotten to put our own oxygen mask on. What else? What are some of the other disadvantages here of the level 4 space?
It's very much along the same lines as what you're saying, but the way that I describe it is we can tend to get caught up in other people's drama. Like, I call it the swirl. Like, when I'm coaching with clients, I'm like, how are you getting caught up in their swirl? And it's because we care so much, right? And we're trying to be of so much service, and we're putting the value of us in taking care of or fixing other people.
Yeah, I love that.
Get caught up in their own drama. So again, it's the realization that can be the challenge in this level, but the realization that this isn't about fixing. It's about how can we be of service and help, but it's coming from an empowerment standpoint versus getting caught up, in their world, versus also the motivation of us being liked, right? Sometimes in this level, it's like, I want to make sure people like me, so let me do as much as I can for everybody. And then how quickly we can drop into those lower levels when it doesn't happen.
Absolutely.
I poured my heart out. I did so much for this person, and I can't believe how they treated me or whatever. And then we can drop into those lower levels. So I know for me, that can definitely be when I'm in that service mode, because I just want to help people so bad. Right. So
yeah,
that's never happened to me.
Never, Scott. I wasn't thinking about you at all.
Never.
I have the I have the disease to please. There's no question about it. So no. Hey, thanks for that explanation too, because that really helps. Yeah, that really helps.
Level 4 is the mindset here is you win. And you could be any person, the circumstance, or even yourself, if you are the one who needs the most compassion in that moment. And we forget ourselves often. So we don't give ourselves that self-compassion. That is a whole episode in and of itself, right, Wendy?
That is. Anything else that we need to wrap up besides, of course, we'll go inside and have a call to action for everyone, but anything else we need to wrap up as we think about level 3 and level 4 as of right now? No?
I'm just
Good?
listening. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, Scott, I really appreciate all that you bring and your just your experience and your questions. So let's go inside, and your call to action for this episode, again, I think is think about level 3 and level 4 in the ways that we've described it so far. And when and how do you show up in that way? Right? How does that show up for you? When you think about how we describe those levels. And I think after that, we will see you next time in Culture is an Inside Job.
Episode 6.
Yes.
See you soon.
See ya.
Absolutely.